Okay, hi. Can everyone hear me okay? Just give me a little thumbs up so I can see you all. Great. Wow, what a great turnout. Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Helen. I am the Deputy Editor-in-Chief for the UPR, and I'm very, very happy to welcome you to the LSE Undergraduate Political Reviews Annual Research Conference, with the title and theme of New Challenges, New Perspectives. Given the nature of this as a Zoom conference, should my internet decide to spontaneously combust during this opening panel, the Editor-in-Chief, Jin Tao, will be taking over from me to introduce our keynote speaker. My team at the UPR and I have worked really hard on preparing for this conference, so we're delighted to see you all here. I would especially like to welcome our external speakers, who were chosen by our team of associate editors from a large cohort of submissions. A quick note for housekeeping: the opening and closing panels will be recorded, but all the individual panels which will follow afterwards will not be recorded. So no pressure to turn your camera on if you don't want to be recorded in either the opening or the closing panels. Before I introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, I'd just like to detail the wonderful successes the UPR has achieved this year. We restarted the blog, and we currently receive around 3 blog submissions a week from both LSE undergraduates and universities from around the world. We hosted a successful essay competition for students in their final year of school, for which the winner will be announced in the closing panel. We will also be hosting a research dialogue between journals from LSE next week. And finally, we are also in the process of producing a podcast and integrating undergraduate modules formative blog posts into our online blog that we already run. Of course, absolutely none of this would be possible without our committed executive committee and our research, academic, and editorial divisions. A quick moment of pride for me, particularly as Deputy Editor-in-Chief. I was in charge of overseeing the recent publication of our first journal edition for the year, Volume 4, Issue 1. We received an excellent foreword by Professor David Soskis, and it includes 7 pieces of excellent undergraduate research. These pieces range from topics including the representations of the Mau Mau uprising in the New York Times to post-Soviet Ukraine politics. Our team of associate editors worked tirelessly on reviewing these pieces and sending them through numerous stages of copy edit, with the final product published earlier this March. We have already received great feedback, but of course, always welcome more, good or bad. So head over to the LSE UPR website to read Volume 4, Issue 1 in full. I will now finally introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Paul Apostolidis, an Associate Professorial Lecturer and the Deputy Head of Department for Education in the Department of Government here at LSE. I am lucky enough this year to take his GB 262 course on contemporary political theory, which has left me pondering concepts such as citizenship and the notion of rights bearer. He is also a fellow researcher, though well established beyond the undergraduate level. He has conducted research on migrant day laborers in America, which illuminates the very concepts we learn about in such thorough detail in lecture and in seminar. Dr. Apostolidis is also an avid supporter of the UPR and has provided both guidance and opportunities to expand and facilitate our ethos throughout the academic year. We could not be more grateful for his ongoing support and expertise, and are more than delighted that he is speaking at one of our most important events of the year. Today, he will be talking about his current research on migrant workers and COVID-19, which has links with some of the panel themes that you will attend later on. Without further ado, I will now hand over to him to illuminate you further. Thank you, Dr. Apostolidis.
Thanks, Helen. Hello, everybody. Helen, thanks for that kind introduction. And thanks to everyone involved with the UPR for inviting me to speak to you today. And everyone, welcome to this exciting event. Before I say a few words about my research, I'd like to offer some initial comments about how I see the importance of the UPR's various activities and the contribution that student research makes to our broader academic environment here at the LSE. As you know, people and institutions around the world come to the LSE and turn to the LSE for research. And the intensity, the productivity, and the global reach of our research culture define the core of this school's identity. And so in a way, it's no surprise to me that the desire to pursue independent research is there among so many students and really flourishing among people such as you all. But in another sense, it is quite startling that you are here for this conference and that you're involved in the UPR's research culture, especially the presenters, but everybody else as well. What you are doing is noteworthy because you all face, as you know, just as heavy demands on your time and concentration as all the other students do. These demands come from high expectations and workloads in your courses. Apologies for that, but not really. They come from all the other things you do, from the volunteering in the community to searching for summer jobs and everything else. And as we all know, this past year has been extraordinarily difficult as a time in which to tackle new challenges and explore unfamiliar territory, even as the pandemic has forced us all to adapt quickly to very different ways of interacting and working. So I just want to say that given this context, I find it especially encouraging that you all have gathered here today to hear these presentations, to take part in this growing culture, I might even say hothouse of independent student research at the LSE. I would encourage you to take part actively too. There's nothing worse when you're presenting a paper than to have the audience just kind of sit there quietly and not raise any questions. So Zoom makes things tough, but we can make things better if we try. Please know also that what you're doing here directly fuels a trajectory toward expanding research by students that we have initiated in the government department. One of the innovations in education that we're most eager to pursue in the future is to expand opportunities for students to get involved in research as investigators in their own right. And this is also a particular passion of mine. Now, why exactly would we think that fostering student engagement in research is a positive thing? Well, often when higher education leaders talk about the value of student research, they invoke a common distinction between actively, quote, producing knowledge and passively consuming it. Well, I'm not so fond of this economic language, actually, because I think that it misses some important ways in which processes of engaging in research change us. When you do research of your own, you don't just create new conceptions or generate findings that exist in the world as objects for others to consider and use, although those results are very important and they're very satisfying when we see them take shape. But in addition, I would say that conducting research leads you to develop critical habits of mind, and that these habits are difficult to form in any other way. You become mentally skilled in showing healthy skepticism toward common wisdoms, skilled in asking for evidence to support claims. And I think even more significantly, you acquire what I would call an inclination toward method. You gain an interest, even a fascination, with the issue of how to go about forming a valid and persuasive account of events, or analysis of an issue, or reading of texts. And I think that this disposition toward method not only makes you more knowledgeable, it also makes you a sharper thinker, a more astute critic, a person who more quickly and clearly perceives where the chances are to approach stubborn social and political problems in new ways, and how you and others can make that happen. And so the government department has just been delighted to see the UPR develop and diversify its endeavors from the journal to the blog. Thanks again, Helen and everyone, for featuring GB262 students' blogs as well, and to this conference, and soon the podcast, which I'm also eagerly anticipating. Please know that the faculty shares with you the excitement both about making new things known and about opening ourselves to continual changes and challenges through research. So now, as Helen mentioned, I'd like to share with you a bit about my own current research. My research uses the tools of critical theory to shed light on ways that ordinary working people can respond to situations of oppression and domination, and also to illuminate how we should characterize those conditions of power. But recently, I gave a paper at a conference on the concept of biopolitics. And this was based on some of my research with Latino migrant workers in the United States. I'm going to offer some thoughts from this paper and also suggest one more general theme for you to keep in mind as this conference unfolds and as many of you pursue your own independent inquiries. This is the challenge of becoming critically aware of the political effects your research may have. In modern societies, especially where regimes of knowledge typically rely on and actively produce systems of knowledge. So COVID-19 has ignited keen interest among political theorists in the subject of biopolitics. And this is an idea that was given its most influential form by the late 20th century thinker, Michel Foucault. I'm going to share my screen here so you can look at a couple of slides while I talk. Everybody see that okay? Good, okay. Is it showing the slides? Okay, all right, there we go. All right, so Foucault's notion of biopolitics complements another key concept that he developed to characterize modern forms of power, right? This was the concept of discipline that my students have heard about in the course. Discipline refers to techniques of power that form normalized subjects by training people's bodies to become productive in certain ways and by inducing habits of behavioral self-regulation. Whereas discipline operates through micro-level processes shaping individual bodies and minds, Foucault uses the term biopolitics to talk about the ways that mass populations are governed through general programs that promote public health, that promote robust rates of biological reproduction and general well-being. Biopolitics, that is, seeks to maximize the physical well-being, the longevity, and the vitality of people in aggregate terms through large-scale state programs that fight disease, that promote nutrition, and that foster dynamic economic circulation. But Foucault also argues that biopolitics has a negative side. It includes institutional processes and public discourses that racialize populations and that make the biological flourishing of racially privileged groups contingent on systematically exposing racially subordinate groups to higher risks of disease and disability and even death. But you can see why the pandemic has brought issues of biopolitics to the fore. With the outbreak of COVID-19, neoliberal states that have long been enamored with austerity have launched massive programs to prevent the spread of disease, to bolster incomes, and to expand healthcare provision. The pandemic has also vastly intensified data gathering about national populations' bodily health, reminding us of Foucault's signature notion of power knowledge. Right? This is the idea that in modern times, power, whether it's disciplinary or biopolitical, it advances by forming systems of research that define certain problems as needing authoritative intervention. Here is a reason for us all to be aware of how our own work as researchers can feed into patterns of social and political domination, and to think of ways to elude these dynamics or even reverse them. Now, COVID-19 also signals an imperative to examine biopolitics, not only as the practice of government agencies, but also in the realm of hazardous labor. And that's where my interests are most keenly directed. The pandemic, as you're probably aware, has intensified racially unequal disease risks and suffering in the world of work. So those classified as quote unquote essential workers have been disproportionately non-white and migrant. They've been compelled either by dire economic need or by government mandate, as in Trump's 2020 order that meatpacking workers stay at their posts, forced to report to jobs in public transport, hospital care, food production, warehousing, and delivery functions. And through their labors, they have kept social systems operational for all, but they have also shouldered aggravated, lethal risk to service those who are sheltering and working at home. This form of social domination has a history, even though the crisis is now, especially since the onset of neoliberal deregulation, but also predating that era. The realm of employment has long enabled the racially privileged to thrive by exposing racially subordinate workers to higher risks of disease, disability, and death. The problem is that even as COVID causes biopolitical labor to fluoresce, when we see reports on the infection risks that are faced by essential workers, fixating on virus control measures can tend to displace attention from long-standing mechanisms of biopolitics and migrant work. The meatpacking industry in the United States illustrates this effect of displacement. So American slaughterhouses and meat processing plants are staffed largely by Latino migrants and African Americans. News stories recently in the New York Times and elsewhere have exposed the perils of viral transmission when workers labor, quote, elbow to elbow, as one reporter put it, along production lines in beef, chicken, and pork production facilities. And yet long before the risk arose of COVID-19 on a coworker's breath, the close positioning of workstations in meat factories had been posing severe health and safety hazards. One of the most common injuries in this occupation is getting cut by a coworker's knife. Lacerations abound because workers stand shoulder to shoulder, although also because of the way that tight spacing interacts with the technical engineering of production. So above all, meatpacking workers get injured with appalling frequency because the line speeds in these automated plants are so inhumanly rapid. Apart from getting slashed by a coworker's knife, the speed of the line has generated a protracted epidemic, not a pandemic, an epidemic of crippling muscular and skeletal disorders, especially in the absence of effective ergonomic standards. And so, working while in ill health is not at all a new phenomenon in meatpacking, even though the scandal of workers getting sick with COVID and then receiving no paid time off to recover from it has made it seem that way. So what I want to point out here in conclusion is that if you conduct research on workers' vulnerability to COVID in meat factories, you need to take this biopolitical context explicitly into account, because if you don't, then your research will probably end up reinforcing biopolitical power. Also, I would argue that your research will have a similar effect if you don't make room somewhere in your inquiry for studying how workers and their allies can contest biopolitical power dynamics. In my project, I did this relying on concepts drawn from the political theorist Antonio Gramsci by examining how migrant workers deny their consent to biopolitics in the factory by organizing from below to seek more control over the production process. If you don't examine popular resistance to hegemonic power, the problem is that you can inadvertently make biopolitics or any other structure of power look effortlessly self-perpetuating and impossible to change. So that's what I'll say by way of opening remarks for this auspicious event today. Again, I think it is fantastic that you're all here today. It's a great turnout for this conference. I commend the UPR's leaders and the organizers of the conference for the excellent work that you've done to prepare this event and that you've been doing all year long to make the UPR's activities so numerous and so vibrant. And I'm looking forward to the papers and discussions ahead of us today. So congratulations, everybody, and thank you.
I know we can't really clap, but on behalf of everyone, thank you very much, Dr. Apostolidis. There we go, all the reactions in the chat. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, something I found very interesting about that is being very aware of the lived experiences of those who you are researching, the ethics involved in that. It has also provided an excellent segue into the beginning of our individual panels, and has also shown that our undergraduate research can evolve into something just as intricate and developed. I will now put up a slide detailing the logistics and the last section of our opening panel. Let me just get that. Okay, fabulous. Should be loading. Okay, there we go. Can everyone see that? Fantastic. Okay, so we have 2 sessions scheduled. These sessions will run from 1:30 to 2:45, and the second one from 2:45 to 4. The link tree with links to all of the panels should now have been sent in the chat. So you can all access that and access with whichever individual panels you wish. So each session has 3 panels scheduled, which run parallel to each other. And in each one of those panels, there are 3 speakers. This should be made clearer on the link tree. Our panels are arranged by theme, as you can see. So the first session with panels 1, 2, and 3 are quantitative research, the EU, and political theory. And the second session with panels 4, 5, and 6 are COVID-19, populism, and social movements. We will then welcome you back here at 4 o'clock for a closing panel led by our wonderful marketing director, Kitty Thompson. And as you can see at the top, a member of the UPR team will remain in this room throughout the entire conference in case anyone gets virtually lost, can't find the right room, or if there are any questions. Of course, as mentioned previously, these individual panels will not be recorded. Will not be recorded. So I encourage you all to turn your cameras on to provide more of an integrative audience feel for our presenters. I look forward to welcoming you all back here at 4 o'clock, and I really, really hope you enjoy all of the research that's been passed through. Thank you, everyone.